Welcome to Forever Unbreakable and Building Ambition podcast. I'm going to preface this real quick with the fact that this is the only video you're going to have for a few minutes besides the video of Adam, as I failed to set up the podcast properly and hit the record button on the video cameras. And you'll hear that midway through, about 18 minutes through, for those of you watching on YouTube. For those of you that are just getting the audio file, enjoy. The audio is real good, but you'll hear that little break in the middle where I accidentally hit stop thinking we were going to restart. So without any further ado or me talking pointlessly about it, here you go. Tonight's a real exciting night. So tonight we're going to do a combined podcast. First time. I think they call them like a swap cast or something like that. So I got the team from Building Ambition on tonight, and it's super cool because one of you guys is all the way in Ohio right now, right, Adam?
Yes, sir. 90 degrees here today. It's miserable. So
disgusting.
Yeah.
It was also 90 degrees here.
I was going to say, I almost didn't drive here today just because I'd have to go outside into my car, and my car didn't have AC on right when I hopped in. It's like, this isn't worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
The way we live today.
Yeah. Getting too cushy.
Yeah, your podcast is called Unbreakable, and we're complaining about the heat. So I feel like maybe I need to work on my mental toughness a little bit there. But yeah, good to be here, though.
It's all that technology that we have, which is what allows us to tonight have Ben, who is here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, lives in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Adam, who lives in Ohio, all combined into a podcast episode and a video episode. So you'll see that we cut out, as you've already seen in this episode, to Adam in his home in Ohio and how he records. So the first thing I want to ask you guys is, how the hell do you guys do it in two separate states for what I understand is like 20 months-ish now?
Yeah.
You guys have been working together. So how is it possible? How does it work? And how have you guys, maintained a relationship like this, without face-to-face contact, so to speak, outside of Skype? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Ben, why don't you go ahead and hop in on that? Because I kind of got a long-winded answer, and I don't want to praise you too much. So why don't you go ahead?
As the listeners of our podcast are familiar with, Adam is he's got this maybe a syndrome, maybe some sort of disease where he just, well, rightfully so, thinks I'm significantly better than him at podcasting, but he gets frustrated every time I get more praise than him. But yeah, the whole process of getting together on the podcast was kind of this long circuitous journey. I found him on a website like freeradioguestlist.com. Someone just looking for a guest for their podcast, for their radio show, whatever. I see this one, and it's a headline looking for people who have lost weight. At this time, I was personal training. I got my 50-pound weight loss down. I think I was at about 60 at that point, actually. I'm like, oh shit, look at me. I know what I'm doing. So call this guy up or send him an email, and I'm like, hey, I think I can talk about this with you. Why not have me on? And we started talking, and pretty easy conversation right off the bat. And this was August of 2016 or something. So 2 years ago. And just worked out pretty simple. And I recorded the podcast with Adam. This is back when he had a separate co-host too, and kind of went on my life for a couple months. Didn't really hear anything, and comes back in late 2016, says, hey, the guests enjoyed having you on, and would you like to come on again and do a New Year's goal setting, New Year's resolution kind of thing. That's one of our favorite episodes every year to record because we get to trash New Year's resolutioners.
I do like that.
Which in the fitness world, it's unfortunately turned into a bit of a joke. And we touch on that each year. But I got on there, and again, it worked out well. It's just super easy to talk to Adam. We seem to have pretty similar ideas as far as training goes, as far as methodology goes. Our feelings on Fit Tea and Herbalife and It Works and all those multi-level marketing. We get to get after them every once in a while too. So just having that relationship almost right off the bat where we could joke around, we could still be serious, and we kind of were able to feel each other out without being in the same room, which is relatively difficult. I think you can't,
I think it's very difficult.
Yeah, you can't stare someone in the eyes like right here.
Yeah.
Weird for me being in the same room recording as someone, but through the months and the years, we've just kept up this relationship. We'll be in contact a couple times a week, just saying, "Hey, you got ideas for this week's episode?" Answers generally no, and then
that's always how it starts.
And then every Sunday we get together at 5 Eastern, 4 Central, and hop on the horn and come up with something every week and really find a way to wrap it together. But the process of just staying in contact, kind of staying on the same page, and I think it's not something we actively try to do. I think we have just fallen into it. We found that our personalities fit together, and it makes it really easy for both of us.
Yeah, because I'm impressed. Like from my experience now in the podcast world, the intimacy and the conversation you get to have with people, and the research that's required before and things like that. I can't imagine, the level of trust that you have to have, with your partner in it is astronomical, because you're dependent on them to do their part, to do their editing work, to do their research work,
right?
To make sure that their equipment is up and running that day, to remember that theirs is the 4 Central or the 5 Eastern time, and those conflicting things that there's
that only took about 4 months to figure out the whole time zone thing, so don't worry about that,
because that's just another thing that makes the process more difficult. And so to me, I'm humbled. I think it's beyond amazing that you guys are able to do it, and you guys still haven't ever met face to face.
Right.
And you've got 20 months of super successful podcasts that, have listeners coming back time and time and time again, which is basically how you determine that your podcast is either successful or not successful. So that's huge. You guys, it's awesome. Kudos to both you guys on that, because that's crazy.
Yeah, thanks.
So I can't imagine. Like, I've got buddies that have helped me with, or are in the process of helping me host as well, but they're all people that, like, I can go drive to their house
right,
and it not take me 2 days,
Exactly. So Adam, I'm interested to hear what your proclaimed long-winded responses here.
You know what, I've been trying to condense it and edit it as you were talking, because I think you covered just about everything there. And yeah, I had started out doing this podcast, man, it's got to be coming up close 2.5 years or whatever. And those first ones are bad, man. They're so bad. Like, I encourage people not to go back and listen to them. But it started out for me, fitness, weightlifting, powerlifting, everything like that has always been a passion of mine. It's the only thing I've really ever been good at. And I always tell people, I wish I was good at other things that make more money. But that's just not the case. So finally, a few years ago, I decided, I want to take this kind of full time and get into training people and stuff like that. My first client was my father-in-law, who was significantly overweight, suffering from health problems and things like that. So we thought it would be kind of cool to chronicle his journey on the podcast, right? And we'd come on every week and talk about, what we did that week, what his diet was like and things like that. And quickly find out that's super, super boring, because, like, how many times can you talk about walking on the treadmill for 20 minutes or not eating?
It.
Yeah. So quickly found out, like, if this was something I wanted to continue to do, we needed to mix it up. We needed to get other people in there. So just sitting down, researching, and I find this website, like Ben said, where you can post an ad for your podcast and try to get guests. So I put it on there, and we were doing relatively okay at that point as far as downloads go. And I didn't know, like, the theme in this industry, or if that's what you want to call it, is to kind of lie about your numbers. So I just put mine on there. Like, this is what we were doing. We were getting several hundred a week. And I started getting all these emails from people with PhDs and strength coaches from Michigan State and doctors in psychology and all this stuff. And then I get this one from this cat out in Wisconsin that says, "Hey, I'm your man. I swear to God, that was the opening line. And I'm like, I'm going to like this guy, man. I just know I am. But what was different about Ben when he came on the first time, all of these other guests that we had gotten from that ad or the response that had come in from that, they're all trying to sell something, right? And I'm not a huge fan of that, like, at all. Anybody that listens to us knows that. Like, I mean, we've asked for no money, like, not done. We're selling these stupid stickers right now, but I'm probably just going to end up giving them away right now. But I hate it. I think it's gross. I understand you need to make your money, but my philosophy is just kind of be so good at what you're doing that people want, just want to give it to you. And Ben comes on and just shares his story, and he's not talking about online training or sign up for my 3-day jumpstart fitness group, blah, 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 all this stuff. Like, we just had a really good conversation. And then we were able to talk about the Packers as well. So, I mean, that's pretty cool because I'm from Ohio, but I'm a diehard Green Bay guy. So it just kind of worked out. Now you fast forward to, I think it was December, like his first quote-unquote being the co-host episode was like the New Year's Eve or the New Year's episode that year. And the reason that I reached out to him and I asked him to come on full time was because I remember it a little differently than Ben, but I was starting to get into the whole keto thing.
Oh,
and
God.
yeah, people love hearing about that. I was waiting on Ben to respond to that.
Yeah.
But I reached out to Ben and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this. We had a really good episode, really good response the last time you were on. Do you want to come on and talk about this with me? And his response was, I don't know enough about it to talk about it, like on the podcast. And that really struck me because so many people within our industry here, being it strength coach, personal training, nutrition, whatever, they would have just been like, yeah, I mean, I've never done it personally, but I can come on and talk about it. Like maybe we'll get some people to sign up. And that wasn't Ben. He actually sent me the contact of somebody else who I never ended up reaching out to, or things just didn't work out, that could talk about it better than he could. And I love it when people say, I don't know. Like, I'll get back to you, but I don't know right now, because we just don't seem to have that in society today. So right there, I'm like, this is my guy. Like, we were looking to make a change. My co-host at that point had kind of fallen off the wagon as far as diet and interest and all that stuff. And I knew I wanted to take this in a different direction where we could be a little bit more serious, a little bit more scientific and evidence-based, even though I use those words loosely with us. And I knew, like, Ben was my guy for that. So I told him, and I thought immediately he'd be like, yeah, I'm down, let's do it. And he's like, well, give me a few days to think about it. I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, I'm awesome. Why aren't you just dying to come on here? But then right there at the first of the year, about 2 years ago, he came on and said, yeah, I'm down, let's do it. And I don't think, I mean, aside from our scheduled holiday breaks, we're doing this every Sunday. So it's been great. And he brings so much more to the table than I do. And I think we complement each other, because I get kind of long-winded and I take a long time to make my point, as you guys are probably realizing right now. And he does a really good job of, hey, let's bring it back here. Let's put a bow on it. Let's try to, like, there's sometimes we get it back on course and I have no idea how it happened, because I'm drawing a blank in the middle of my speech or being on my soapbox. So, I mean, we really, really complement each other well. But he is the favorite amongst the listeners, and everybody's made that well aware to me, and it does burn my ass every now and again. But it's been a lot of fun. So that's kind of my long-winded answer to it.
Yeah, that's awesome, though. One of the things I want to bring up on that is what you brought up about the truth, right? Like, I've seen it so many times on a lot of the podcasts I listen to, where you're listening to somebody talk about something, and maybe I've done a little bit of research on it, but I've done enough to know that they're wrong, or that they're
just wildly inaccurate,
or that they're trying to just bullshit their way through it and, like, survive the question. And you can just see it, and it's like, come on, man, just come real with us and be like, I just bullshitted you all for 2 minutes.
Right.
I don't have a fucking clue what, in that case, what keto is. Like, I don't have a fucking clue. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for that, Ben, because there are not many people in this world that are that way, where they can just admit right away, like, hey, I might be on the spot right now and I'm supposed to know this, but turns out I don't. And and especially in your field. So let's just talk about the one aspect of the, health and wellness field of nutrition, right? There is, what would you say, 1 million different diets out there? Probably more than that. And not every diet is obviously right for every individual, and everybody's got different goals, which require different diets. But to think that any individual on the planet of Earth knows everything about every diet plan.
Yeah. There would be people out there trying to convince you.
But there are absolutely people out there, and you hear them on other podcasts, who can go from talking about one diet to the next, to the next, to the next. And I was like, there's no way that you know that much about every diet. And I get that it is your job to know and understand that, even if your job is just as a nutritionalist. But like, there is an astronomical amount of things that go into a diet. I'm still trying to figure out what diet is right for me to this day, because it's constant improvement of self and the individual. And I think that's just awesome that you had the ability, and obviously, Adam, you recognize that right away, and that's a why I can see, like, right now that you two work super well together. And it's cool because I get to see something that the guests that are listening don't, is when Ben is talking about Adam or vice versa, I get to look at the two faces and see the smile and be like, that's right, that's me. So like when Adam's like, yeah, Ben's the fan favorite, and Ben's like, you're damn right.
I've been told multiple times.
Yeah, he's huge in Australia, Will, and it's very frustrating because I'm like, guys, I'm the one doing all the work. Like, I've invested in this dude has to get on Skype with a shitty microphone every week, and I got to make the magic happen. But yeah, he's the favorite. So, yeah, it's all good.
Speaking about making the magic happen, like, how hard? Because you obviously come from a fitness nutrition background, so. Talk about learning how to become a, DJ, if you will, or radio host, podcast host, because there's a whole bunch of equipment. It's like a foreign language during the research time before you buy this stuff. And then when you start, it's like, okay, there's also 1 million editing programs. What do I use?
Right.
Like, talk about that, because and you've obviously had to train Ben on how to do some of it himself now, or a lot of it himself. So, it's a process, isn't it?
It is, and starting out, it was kind of overwhelming. But the one, I do like to brag, so I'll just go ahead and do it. The one thing a quality that I have is I'll obsess about things. And when I get into, or I get interested in a new subject, I feel like I have to know everything that there is to know about it, which is obviously impossible and just leads to a lot of frustration and beer drinking. But when we got started, I just went through and I read.
You got to restart, because I never hit record on our cameras.
Serious?
On that Seriously.
I'm sitting there looking at this like,
seriously, I never hit record on our cameras. Damn it.
Good practice.
I was like, what's missing? All right, so we're going to restart.
See, this is the kind of stuff we'd keep in.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, we can. I got to restart, so I just paused this. All right, so we can keep it in if you guys want, and I can just play some logos and shit. We can keep you on the screen the whole time. It doesn't matter.
Well, because the only thing that would get messed up is the video on YouTube, and
yeah,
I think if you just like put that in the comments, like, hey, it's hilarious. So
perfect. Face is probably I know my face would be right, because now I'm sweating.
Right, like now we've got that discussion around technology, just like, we don't really know what we're doing. We mess up all the time.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out the record too. There I am.
Welcome. Yeah. Hey. So. Welcome to Real World Podcasting.
So
if you're watching this on YouTube, because you're only going to see Adam's face for the first, I don't know, what are we at? 18 minutes?
30,
yeah, you should just put disclaimer, like bright blinking lights, like there will be video.
So Adam, you will be we promise that you will be the star of this episode.
I love it. I love it. Hey, so real quick, Will. I was watching one of your episodes, and I was trying to do some research before we got started, and it was one that you recorded with your best friend. You guys were talking about the training and the military stuff that you guys did, and you were drinking out of a decanter that you got it was a wedding gift, or for being his best man, I believe.
Yep.
Okay, and you only drank honey whiskey out of that. So I tried to come up with some honey whiskey, but I couldn't. So I was going to go ahead and crack this, and since we just had that fun little technology snafu there, I figured I'd go ahead and crack that open. But I'll tell you a funny story about recording and everything. A couple weeks ago, we had to record at a different time because I was getting ready to leave for vacation. And Ben's sister came home like at the same time we were trying to record, and like it sounded like she threw something at the wall, and then it was kind of
just slams.
Yeah, it was like that scene from Wedding Crashers, where Will Ferrell's sitting in the basement screaming at his mom, like "Mom, meatloaf!" and Ben's like, "Shut up, get up!" And I was like, I'm totally keeping that in. So I edited it and then moved it to the end of the episode, and so like the music fades, and then you hear Ben yelling at his sister, and he's like, "I'm recording." So it's all good.
That's so awesome. Yeah, so I've never edited any of the audio out of any episode. I've always just adjusted the audio levels.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, my skill set and YouTube knowledge, I don't record oftentimes loud enough. So then I go back and I just turn it up in Adobe Premiere and it seems to work great, but it's been a learning curve and a half. As you can see, I completely forgot to start recording the video. So that was great. So I apologize everybody, but you're going to get the whole first half at the first half. So it'll be exciting.
Yeah, it's good. And the audio tweaks are weird. I see you're using Audacity. Again, we're going to get into this like non-related podcast section where we're just talking about podcasting, which is, I'm sure, what everyone wants to hear, watching the sausage meat. But in Audacity, I was using that to record my mini episodes on Wednesdays for this entire time I've been doing mini episodes. And I think a lot of people like those. I just talk about weird fitness things. So what was last week?
Slam ball.
Slam ball.
Slam ball.
Slam ball. That's what it is.
From the 2000s where they're playing basketball on a trampoline. I talked about the Scottish Highland Games was fun. Swimming the English Channel. We talked about that. Talked about Louis Cyr, the world's strongest man. But for a while, I was just kind of recording it in Audacity, frustrated beyond all hell. Like I got to take the gain up to like plus 15, plus 20 decibels, and I get all this fuzz behind it. So what I do now is I take the whole audio file, run it through a compressor, which will raise the levels, and it kind of evens out the sound. So there aren't too many peaks, aren't too many valleys. Everything's pretty elevated to the same level. And then I'll take it through a noise reduction. So if you just run this for kind of 10 seconds at the end, you can get that ambient room noise, and it'll take all that out. So running the whole audio file through those two things, it'll take, 15 minutes to process probably between the two, but it will fix that level issue where you don't have to raise it in Adobe Premiere, and it'll probably lose some quality there because it's, a secondary, it's like a copy of the original audio file. So if you do it on the original file, be a bit more clear.
Interesting. I'm going to try that on this.
Yeah, and I think, Adam, you've said it's been sounding better for the past month and a half or so. Yeah, and that's what I've been doing. Just got brave enough to not be afraid that I'm going to mess up the entire audio file if I do something wrong.
It's so bad. So like one of the episodes, I didn't have the right setting on the computer, and so now I have a notepad that tells me like, change this setting. So I check all of those before I start.
Right.
Because I was recording using the microphone on the computer and not the wonderful microphone that I paid X number of dollars for. That is an actual legitimate sole purpose microphone.
Right. Like an actual studio microphone.
Yeah. I've had some, and that's that early learning curve that we talk about. And it's that way in every aspect of life. So like, as you two can, speak far more on than I can, being that you do coach fitness and things like that, is people come in and expect this day one, I show up, I'm going to have an immediate result.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, no, there's a learning curve to, everything we do. And like, it's gotta be, frustrating for you guys at times, I would think, where somebody comes in and is just expecting to be, super fit out of nowhere.
Right.
And it's like, hey, it takes years of discipline and, listening to people that know and understand the movement technique to an exercise to build efficiency and gain results. And it's crazy. So like, talk about that for a second once, how frustrating that can be at times.
Well, it's nice. I view it as an opportunity to change someone's perspective. Everyone has been trained maybe by modern day technology that everything should be instant and you should be able to do everything right away. And I think my favorite people to work with are the people who have done it 20 years ago. You know, the ex-college baseball player who's 45 with 3 kids, hasn't touched a weight in 20 years, and he's like, oh, I used to be able to squat 315 for 10. Let's just, throw that on there and see what happens. I'm like, no, man, it's not what's going to happen. You're going to squat from a box with 0 weights just to relearn the method. And it's a good challenge to retrain people to be more patient in these times where we have to step back and we need to understand, hey, you don't know everything. Your body may not be prepared. Your mind may not be prepared. Your nervous system may not be prepared. And we have to take things a lot slower in every day. And I think that bleeds out to just business life, personal life too, when we really internalize that and say, maybe I'm doing things too fast in my normal life and missing these critical points where maybe I'm not, listening to my girlfriend, my wife, my kids as much as I should because I've got 1,000 things going on and I'm not focusing on where my knees are in my squat. That's the equivalent. Like, okay, well, I'm getting down there just fine and it should be good. Like, no, that'll cause a catastrophic failure if if you're loading up weight and it becomes more stressful. So being able to anchor that in just the basics of life, the basics of biomechanics, is a very transferable skill set, and being able to sell people on that is a fun little challenge.
No, absolutely. I think that there's a lot with that whole, mental focus. So there's a lot that goes on in our lives that when you go, like I go to the gym a lot of times to relieve everything that is going on in my life.
Right.
And when life's too stressful, the only thing I think about sometimes at the gym while I'm trying to perform whatever exercise. So the thing that is in my life that I do, 3-4 times a week, that is the most technical thing that I do is swimming. Because every little, if my arm is off by a millimeter, it causes additional drag in the water and slows me down and I lose all this efficiency. And if I'm thinking about anything other than all of the 100 little checks I need to do in a swim stroke, my swim is atrocious. And I'll get in the gym some days and I'll just be frustrated about something at work or something going on at home or whatever it is. And I'll try to frickin' swim and it'll be miserable. I'll be like 10 seconds slower, 100. And it's all because of that little bit of focus that's missing in life. And I think that's critical. How do you, what's your thoughts on the entry client, Adam, as they take on fitness?
I think it's a great opportunity to find out what kind of coach you are. And these are conversations that I have with Nick, a friend of mine that also does some coaching. And I think, in my opinion, too often the people in our industry shift that blame from themselves, like somebody not catching on to a movement or not sticking to the diet or not following the prescribed workout that they might be have laid out for this block or whatever it might be. They shift that blame to the client. And at some point, yes, it does become the client's fault. But I think, in my opinion, it's usually a reflection of what kind of coach you are. The client may be great at squatting. You just may suck at cueing. And that's kind of what I've been seeing, especially since I've shifted in the past year from kind of the one-on-one stage to more of the sports performance and working with a lot of kids at the same time. It's really challenged me to up my game and up my cueing and up my coaching and bring a little bit more intensity to the room. So I think, too often we're like, oh man, these people, they live in this self-gratifying society and they see how everything happens so quickly just by scrolling through Instagram and Facebook. But I think it's an opportunity, for me to kind of step back a little bit and say, no, this is what needs to happen. These are the processes that we need to go through to get this right. And honestly, like now, my biggest challenge is with sports coaches, and it's like I'm battling a volleyball coach right now. Oh man, I haven't even got to talk to Ben about this, but it's driving me nuts because I did their entire summer programming and everything. She loves it. I mean, 93% of the kids are jumping higher, running faster. Everything's getting better. You know, the ones that have been showing up consistently, they're making all these improvements. And then she sends me this email with all of this praise and everything and telling me what's going on. And we're getting ready to retest on Monday, tomorrow. And she said, I didn't know if they were going to, sign back up for in season or if I was going to run their camp or anything like that. And she's like, I want to do it all. I want you to take all of it. But I need more conditioning. We need more conditioning. You need to run them till they puke. And I'm sure Ben's shaking his head right now, even though I can't see him because that just is
absolutely
he?
is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. I can confirm.
Yeah. It drives me nuts with these coaches and kind of that old school mentality that we got to run, And I'm trying. When I first saw it, I got really frustrated. And then I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity for me. Let me get some articles. Let me go to NSCA and pull some research off and let me show her why that's not the best methodology. And in fact, it might be harming your performance when we're playing. So I guess also, to kind of take this a step further, in the past probably 3 months, and Ben and I have talked about this a lot, I've been trying to do a lot more self-reflection and really in the past month or so, it's really working on my ego and everything, whereas instead of seeing that as an attack on me, I see it as an opportunity to become a better coach and things like that. So while it is challenging and it does get frustrating at times, it's just an opportunity to grow as a trainer, as a strength coach, as a nutrition coach, whatever your profession may be. And I think the ones that just shift all the blame to the client, you're a shitty coach. So that's kind of my opinion on it.
I agree. Like you have to take ownership first, I think, of any deficiency anywhere in any organization. And that doesn't have to be the health and fitness, nutrition world, like any organization in the world. You could be selling cars.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If you are responsible for somebody else, then you need to take ownership first of the deficiency. And this is what I tell my soldiers, right, that are underneath me. So if a team leader has a guy who leaves his equipment unsecured in his wall locker, so he just didn't lock the locker. The locker could be through the hole and he just didn't, clasp it shut and spin the dial to make sure and pull on it to make sure that it's locked. And my team leader wants to get up in his ass and chew him out and smoke him, make him do a whole bunch of push-ups, sit-ups, and just bring on the house of pain to him. And the one thing that I say to that team leader is, I'm like, did you teach him how to really lock a locker first? It is a simple task, right? It's the simplest task. But how do you punish somebody if you haven't shown them the proper way to do something? So if you're not holding yourself accountable and you're not taking ownership of it, you can't expect them to take ownership of something you haven't taken ownership of yourself as well. And so I'm like, if you've done those things, at that point, then let the dogs loose. Then it's on them. Right. But until that point that you can say with full honesty that I've given them all of the resources and now it's their failing, that is when I think that you can completely push the blame onto the next level down. When you've provided them, every piece of ownership on it that you can, and now it's time for them to own their deficiency. And that's something that obviously, through self-reflection, I think self-reflection is the most important thing an individual can do. I started doing it probably 3 or 4 years ago now. And I was a very conceited person. Like my shit didn't stink. I was the guy who knew everything about every diet. Right?
Isn't that terrible where you can definitively say I started self-reflecting and being self-aware 3 to 4 years ago? Yeah. You went through all that time up until then.
I was 30 years old probably when I started self-reflection.
Right.
And I was like, I'm kind of a shitty person. I talk out of my ass. And now that I've done that and I've refocused on myself, I've become way more humble. And I've become a way better friend, a way better husband to my wife, member of the family to my entire family. And it's all just because I take the time after to reflect on myself. I take ownership for the things that I didn't do, as well as the good things that I did. I'll praise myself for the good that I do as well, but you have to take ownership for the things that you didn't do so that you can make the people around you better. when you do that,
Right.
you have those huge gains, and that's what both of you have essentially said. Adam really probably said it the best there before, but you got to do that before you can pass that ownership onto them. And I think that's really where you do get a lot of shitty coaches.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of coaches that I can look back in my life, having wrestled for probably like, I don't know, 19 years or so, 18 years,
Right.
like forever. And then playing soccer as well. I can look back and fitness. I've done the CrossFit thing, and I've done the, getting trainer assistants. And there's a big difference between coaches that are real coaches and truly care about the person, that they are coaching and mentoring and making into a better individual, developing them, because they're not developing them to be a great squatter,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're developing them to be great in and outside of the gym,
Mm-hmm.
or in and out, on and off the field. And I think that is where you get a lot better coach. And that's exactly what you're talking about, is you got to get rid of what was the old way to do things, and that's where I find the keto thing hilarious. And I do keto a decent amount. I do right now. I'm on what's the slow carb or whatever,
Okay.
basically. Because I want to consume less food during an Ironman.
Mhm.
So you switch over to that diet because it allows a little bit more freedom and flexibility. But the fact that fat is encouraged and carbs are not, when
Right.
my whole life I was told, don't eat fat,
Yeah.
don't eat fat, don't eat fat.
Carbs are energy, bro.
Yeah.
Gotta have carbs.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, there's so much science that says, and you can find science on both sides of the road. And so I tell people, I'm like, there's no one blueprint
Right.
that will ever just work for you. You can't just give somebody, and you guys can probably speak on this way better than I can, but you can't give somebody the exact diet that worked for you.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to tailor it around them, their capabilities, and also their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Because would I love to go eat organic every day? Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Can I afford to? Absolutely not. I wouldn't have a podcast if I was out eating organic food every day because it's so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But at the same time, you've got to spend a good amount of money on your nutrition because it's what fuels your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking the shortcut is never the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think to bring up your earlier point about people getting stuck in their ways or being inflexible, I think people get really afraid of not being able to work with shades of gray or in that uncertain area. I think I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people would like the world to be black and white, a definitive hard line saying this is right, this is wrong, this is why.
Yeah.
The more we learn about nutrition specifically, I think it's maybe the most controversial thing in the health and fitness world is just all these different diets. They all work to a certain extent. People can go on them. The only thing that really works is calories in, calories out as far as weight loss goes, which we talk about quite a bit. But the way to get there, it can be different for everyone. We've had a lot of fans of keto. We've had a lot of fans of flexible dieting. We've had, you got your slow carb thing. We've heard Whole30 people, whatever it may be. But people are afraid to be maybe wrong or proven not definitively correct.
Yeah.
I should say.
I think that's a great way to word it.
Yeah, and it's if you're not definitively correct, it's almost an attack on you. This worked for someone else. They must have cheated, whatever. But as a society, maybe, and as a health and fitness culture, we need to get into this thing where we need to be more flexible in our personal beliefs and our training strategies. I've had clients who just refuse to deadlift. I love deadlifts. Not doing them because they're terrible, but
it's like doing a burpee.
Exactly.
Nobody likes
no
to do the
no one
burpee.
wants to do it, but it's a great exercise. If you don't want to do it, we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do keto, you don't have to do keto. If you don't want to do flexible dieting, you don't have to do flexible. If you don't want to count carbs, count calories, whatever.
Yeah.
There are different ways for everyone. And when you get so locked into your own beliefs, then it goes way back to that, self-reflection. How can I do this differently to serve my clients better, to serve my family better, to serve my coworkers better? Because there are different ways that work for everyone. You just can't be so rigid in your beliefs that this is the only way.
And it's hard not to be rigid. Like, it is hard not to be rigid because you have to do the self-reflection piece. It's like, Adam, you're probably the newest to the self-reflection piece based on when you started. And like, how hard was it at first? Because you can speak better than I could. Me having to look back 4 years now to think about what self-reflection was like to me on the first day. But how hard was it to tell yourself, like, yeah, we need to change a couple of things?
Well, I knew, ego was something that was an issue with me. I didn't know to what extent. So about a month ago, or however many weeks, we were getting ready for vacation, and I love to read, but I don't always have enough time with everything going on. But when we go on vacation, my wife and I always pick out an audiobook to listen to on the way down, and then I'll buy a new book to read while we're there. So I picked up Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And if you guys haven't checked it out, I would seriously highly recommend it. And it's just chapter by chapter, different lessons. But what he does a really good job of is giving examples from people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, different NFL coaches, Bill Belichick, he mentioned in there. And it's a little bit more recent than rather than going back into Greek mythology and philosophy from back, hundreds and thousands of years ago. So I'm going through this book chapter by chapter, and I'm just eating it up. Like, I'm really loving the stories and listening to or reading about Bill Belichick and how he started volunteering his time and watching film for free just to perfect his craft to become this excellent coach. And no matter what you think of the Patriots, I mean, he's a pretty good coach. And then I start. What's that?
I said I can't do that even as a Packer fan.
Right? Yeah.
Win games.
I love mentioning Bill Belichick as somebody that lives in Ohio because Cleveland Browns fired him. So I mean, I love bringing it up here. But as I'm digging into the book a little bit more and more and more, I'm starting to, read an example and then think about a time in my life where this has been an issue, or where communication is broken down between my wife and I because instead of me being present in the conversation, I'm just waiting to respond. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not listening to anything that she said. I've already got my rebuttal in my mind, and I'm waiting to get that in. So it's been interesting, and what has really helped me is my wife knowing that, like, I'm trying to do this and I want to be. And the biggest reason that I wanted to take all this on is because I am coaching so much, and I'm working with kids, and I want to be the best possible leader that I can. Not to get the most wins or not to run the fastest 40 or get the biggest vertical. I want to have a positive impact on some kid's life. I want some kid to go to college who maybe wouldn't have because of what we've done in the weight room or on the wrestling mat or something. So I know in order to do that, I've got to figure out how to remove ego from it and not make it about me. So with her knowing that I'm trying to do this and trying to better myself, like, I'll make comments about something and she'll be like, "Is that ego?" I'm like, "Damn it. It is."
That helps that she's also able to kind of, like,
it really does
at times.
So I mean, it's just, and what's been really fun about it, and it is difficult to really sit down and be honest with yourself. And I've even been taking notes, and I started journaling, and now it's leading to these other things that I'm interested in and I want to get into that maybe I wouldn't have 6 months ago, because I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I'm a powerlifting meathead, bro. I can't read about that or study this or do that. And now it's like, man, let's just enrich yourself and try to be a better human being. And I think that's the overall arching message of our podcast. It's not so much lose weight, feel better, move better. Those are all great things. But let's just be better humans. Let's do life better. Let's treat each other better. And I think we can do that with these different roads that we might take, be it weight loss or nutrition or getting in the gym or whatever. But I've definitely significantly improved. Trying to choose my words better here, but it has been challenging, and trying to be more present in the conversations and interactions and things like that. It's hard, and there's things that I've decided not to do, and places that I haven't gone in the past couple weeks, and even people that I've had to stop interacting with because it just becomes fueling my ego and doing things, and I'm not doing things that are necessarily making me better as a person. And also taking more criticism and accepting it, and instead of getting defensive, trying to understand where they're coming from. Because even if I think they're wrong, what I've found is it's something that I can improve upon. And I'll give you an example. I posted videos of some of my girls, my volleyball team, squatting sometime. I don't know when. I don't think it was recently, but my wife's best friend is a physical therapist. And they were talking on the phone the other day, and my wife's friend says, yeah, I saw a video of the team Adam was working with, and I almost texted him because there were some things I think he needed to watch on this one particular girl. And instantly, like, I get that fire in my gut, you know? And
immediate defense.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, what does she know? You know, just spewing ego and bullshit everywhere. And then, you know, my wife just stopped. She doesn't even say anything. She just looks at me, and I'm like, you know what? Tell Casey to text me because it probably can help. And I probably just something that I need to be looking at that I didn't catch. And sure enough, like, she was right. It's something that we got to work on tomorrow. But fighting that instant urge to get defensive and fire from the hip is my biggest challenge right now. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But I'm curious to throw this back to you, Will. What are some like tactics and strategies that you use when doing the whole self-reflection thing?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I use is exactly what one of what you use is I write it down.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately write down, you know, some of the things that I notice that I need to improve on, or where I, you know, put my ego in front of all things else. So, for instance, like we rode at XCTC over the last month for a big Army training exercise. And I outrank the guy who is my grader. So likely this means that I've got more years of military service. And that then means also more experience within the military. Doesn't mean that I know what's right or that I'm making the best decision at the time. It just means I've been around longer. And then, so he's ranks below me. I've been through tactical schools like the Army's Ranger School that he has not, which teach you patrolling and leadership skills. And we're up on this objective, and I'm like, this guy, you know, my ego is definitely in the way. And I was like, this guy cannot, you know, he's not going to be able to teach me anything out here. He's grading me and shouldn't be grading me because he's never operated in my job and doesn't fully understand what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But what I needed to remember, and what took me probably a full day to check in, and then I wrote it down immediately, and every day when I write down these things, I focus on them until it's sunk in that I don't need it anymore, and then I can go on to the next page. And I had to understand that the Army selected this person to come and validate me because he does have the experiences. And however he hasn't been selected for this pay grade yet or gotten to operate in this pay grade, he clearly understands the needs of the pay grade. And once I was able to do that, he taught me probably 25 or 30 different things that I had never learned about tactically patrolling, which run the chance of saving lives in combat. So when you look at it, that's the other part, is I look at how will this benefit me in the future? Like, because we as human beings are all reward based, right? We all want the reward. So, you know, in weightlifting, if you're benching at 300 and you want to get to that 305 bench and that's your goal, the reward is achieving it one day. And so I look at it as reward based, and I always try and to lower my ego. I look at, like, by being humble and accepting, you know, the criticism or whatever it might be, how do I get to a reward out of this? Mm-hmm. And so the reward from that experience is the fact that, like, now I know moving forward that I now have 20 more things in my toolbox, or 25 or 30 more things in my toolbox that are going to help me keep men alive in combat. And I can pass this knowledge on to new guys. And it's kind of like that whole pay it forward thing. Mm-hmm. Give it to 3 people and hope they pay it forward to you know, hope one person pays it forward to 3 more, and you get that cascade. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I do, is I try and find a reward in everything in life. So, right. You know, sometimes that almost then makes it back to the egotistical, where, like, you're praising yourself, but you have to, because self-praise is important in self-confidence, and self-confidence is huge and irreplaceable. So as you do the self-reflection, you often become less egotistical, or have less like outward ego, because you become more humble. But you have to praise yourself. If you take that away from yourself, you're never going to build the confidence required to show yourself that you could bench the 305. Or you can go to combat and be a combat leader and stay calm under the pressures of combat, or, much like training for the world record.
Right.
A part of that gets into this ego system where you have to build the confidence that tells you that you can do it. And that was when I first started, that was a rough road for me, because of being humble was so hard, because then I felt like I was starting to lose some of my self-confidence. And so I made it, one of the big things I did was I found a way to make it reward based. So I'm always looking at how am I rewarding myself. It's like when I have a kick-ass like week of my nutrition and my nutrition's locked in, I usually give myself some awesome Zesties. And you don't know what Zesties is, Adam. But
I don't.
It's the best ice cream shot. It's the best ice cream shot.
I heard Ben moan there, so I know it's got to be something good.
Oh, it's amazing. So but it's those rewards, right? Like if I'm on top, and I tell us to some of my employees, I'm like, I used to have a drinking problem where I used to drink every day. Like I used to need alcohol. And the way that I quit alcohol was I gave myself alcohol as a reward. And so I would lay out a list of tasks that I wanted to accomplish throughout the week, and different areas of my ego that I wanted to work on, and other self-reflection pieces. And at the end of the week on Saturday, I could go out Friday night or Saturday night, whichever am I choosing, if I was able to achieve everything on my list. Otherwise, I had to spend all day Saturday and all day Saturday night fixing my deficiencies so I could become better. And that built this discipline in me that has been like the one thing that I today pride myself in the most is my self-discipline. And that has all started because of self-reflection and the ways that I have found to reward myself. And about 4 years ago was when I slowed down my drinking and did that self-assessment that like, hey, this is why you're not achieving shit. It's because like you've got all these goals, and it's great because I wrote down all these goals that I had, and I wasn't getting to any of them. And it was all because I was self-absorbed, thinking I was good enough, and I was going out and doing things that I shouldn't have. And I never sat down and said, let's look at life and let's write down what you do on a daily basis.
Right.
And then I found all these common trends, and I was like, okay, let's start to fix these. And the first one was stop being such an egotistical asshole. And that's where I started. So I think the reward thing is a big thing. And I think a lot of people do it when they do self-reflection and don't even realize that they're finding rewards that they're giving to themselves.
So one thing with these rewards is a lot of people are looking at these external rewards or external validation, have a difficult time turning it internally, and a difficult time accepting rewards that are maybe not tangible. It's it's not that 100 Instagram likes. It's not Zesties ice cream at the end of the week. It's just rewarding yourself in the knowledge that okay, I can save some of the people on my team from gunfire, from whatever, if I patrol better. How are you able, or where did you make that shift between maybe I can have a beer at the end of the week, or I can have a dozen beers at the end of the week, whatever it was, and I am finding a reward in something that isn't concrete, that isn't tangible, that I can't see, I can't share, I can't feel it, but this is a reward in itself.
It took that realization that I was going to reward myself. So like once I realized that, then it was, okay, now I want to seek rewards that don't cause me to come off of my course, right? So like if you're locked in on a diet, going to Zesties is coming off of that diet.
Right.
So I needed to find rewards that were a reward that didn't take me off my course. So while I was able to reward myself with alcohol on Saturday nights, I was like, I want to find something that is a different reward. So then I started to enter, these 5K races and 10K races, which is still a tangible thing
Yeah, get
in
a
the
t-shirt,
end.
get a bib, get all that
Yeah,
good
exactly.
stuff.
But I was rewarding myself with a PR.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that the only way I could get a PR was to have all of the rest of the pieces in my life follow the course that I wanted to, and then I would be given the reward I wanted.
Right.
And a lot of times, if people go back on my social media and stuff, I don't, in the last like 4 years, I don't ever share like what my result was, because that's something that is, it's a reward to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need the 100 Instagram likes on a, whatever my 5K time was, but I have that internal reward, and that's what I sought out and sought after. And I think it's super important that, and that comes with the self-reflection, is the ability to reward yourself without anybody knowing. I think that, it exudes this humbleness more as well. But it's when you find a way to truly find happiness in your own rewards for yourself that nobody knows about but you, I think those are like the most pure rewards, and they provide the most amount of drive in the right direction. And to me, that's probably it's probably the second greatest significance to like my success, has been the self-rewarding piece. And the greatest piece to my success has been learning to like control my brain at all times. So I used to not have, and I'm sure you guys can both relate, because you guys, I see you guys both as the same way I am, right? Super driven, very like type A personality, go, 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 which also means that your mind is racing this go, 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 go. So you'll be thinking about, dinner tonight and this, that, all at the same time, right? And that was my biggest issue, was that I couldn't focus. So you talk about like being in the squat and not being focused on every inch of the squat, every millimeter of the squat, and having your knees in the proper alignment and all this stuff, which will result in you getting the gains that you want. Like that's what it takes, but it takes this mental focus. And it took me probably 2 years to build a mental focus where I could actually control my brain at any time, at all times. And one of the things I tell people is the highest significance to that for me was I had to cut music out of all of my physical training. I had to cut music out of, when I used to do homework, I used to have music on in the background. Yeah. And I had to cut it out because it was allowing things to pass through my brain at the same time that I was trying to provide maximum focus. So I used to be the guy in the gym at one time with earplugs in, so that I couldn't hear the music in the gym or have any other distraction besides my focus on the specific movement. And I had the greatest gains in my life through that process. But it was a very painful process of like that mentally figuring it out. And that was one of the things that I wrote down in my self-reflection, was learn to control your brain. Because in the middle of, a lecture from a teacher, my brain would be like, thinking about the girl that I want to take on a date tonight, or the workout that I've got to do with a coach that I hate, So I think that was a significant part too. And through that, I provided myself with even more rewards. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people don't see or understand. And people want, and you have to, when you first start, you're looking for those immediate rewards. But eventually, I think it's important that you get to rewards that take you, like the drinking thing I did as a week-long reward. Right. And now I have rewards that I look at that are a month or more away to kind of, because I've been doing it long enough that now I've got the discipline to stay that course for the month and work towards that reward that I'm going to get on that day.
Right. So yeah, it's it's back to that initial discussion about training the first time person. You were new to this thing. You had to step your way into it. You didn't just throw 100 pounds on your back and run 26.2 miles day one. It's like, maybe I'll take a couple weeks to prepare for that one and see what happens. But yeah, I think there's this perception that the mental aspect of fitness is maybe less important than the rest. And I know, Adam, you can probably talk on this a little bit more, being your meathead self, just lifting heavy weights with zero regard for your health.
Absolutely.
But I think as we grow, we have to take that mental acuity into account more so than maybe it's not all just physical. And Adam, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, because like I said, you're going through this a little bit more, and you definitely, well, I shouldn't throw you under the bus like that. Not saying you definitely did it wrong, but the hernias in the shoulder and the back don't lie.
Right.
So
they don't.
Maybe there's something a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah, and I wish I had this in-depth answer to that, but maybe it's just maturity, but it's been interesting, and you've gone along this journey with me, as much as we hate that word, but Will, back in the day, prior to my son being born, I was pretty heavy into powerlifting, and ended up, now this is with a bench shirt, so let me get that out of the way. I had a cheater shirt on. I benched 730 at one point in time.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, stupid is what. There was no reason for it, but that was my thing, man.
For Instagram, even so,
it was. Yeah,
where you get likes for it. What?
Yeah, there was no immediate gratification back in those days. You just got a stupid Scott's trophy, and that was it. But yeah, now coming back, I came back out of retirement, I guess, if you would call it that, back in February, and had a friend of mine coaching me, and it was a whole different world, because we were paying attention to different things, like, hey, how do you feel? Is something hurting? How's the form look? We're watching videos and things like that. And I don't know if it's like that for everybody, but then at that point it kind of clicks, where it's like, oh, I've become that guy that everybody used to talk to me about. Like, hey, wait till 15 years from now when your shoulders hurt and your back's screwed up and you can't do it like that anymore. It's like, now you have to pay attention to different things. But what's interesting to me is, taking a step back like that, and I don't even really want to call it a step back. It's just opening your eyes a little bit more, becoming a little bit more mature, educating yourself, and having a little bit of self-reflection. Like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do a 50-pound jump here. Let's do 10 pounds. Let's be realistic. I came to the point, and Ben and I talked about this. It's like, back in the day when I was competing really seriously and having a lot of success in other people's eyes, I feel like I did really well in spite of everything that I did, because if I would have taken this approach 20 years ago, who knows where I could have ended up. Maybe it would have been the same, maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten 2 hernias and, screwed my back up and everything else. But I don't know. I don't know if it's just maturing. Once you turn 30, things seem to work a little bit different than they did at 19 and 22 and stuff like that. But it was a little bit challenging to me starting out, taking different approaches to your training, to your programming and things like that. And hey, we're going to pay attention to posterior chain here, and we're not just going to do a bunch of curls like a bro. But then, to get that reward later on where, and I didn't even know it was going to come. I didn't know what was going to end up happening, but I go 9 for 9 in the meet. I hit a PR on deadlift, and I felt great. I wasn't wrecked the next day. Like, that was that reward that you're talking about, Will. And now it's like, going forward, I know that if I program A, B, and C and do it this way, I'm going to get that reward on meet day, where I'm going to be able to predict all the numbers that I'm going to hit. I know everything's going to work out just fine. And I'm going to feel great afterwards, instead of being laid up for 3 days and getting in a fight with your girlfriend or your wife or whatever, And I wish it was something that I could go back, and I'm sure there's lots of guys that say this, go back, 15 years ago and tell yourself, or if you're going to write a letter to yourself in the past or something like that. But I don't know if it was a sign of maturity, or I think the biggest thing that helped me out with all that and kind of being self-aware with the training and taking a step back was just having my coach, Nick, who was a outside set of eyes, who was invested in me as a person, as a dad, as a husband, and not as a powerlifter so much. He wants to see me do my best, but he doesn't want to see me get a divorce or abandon my kids because of some stupid goal I have on the squat. So it was just a big combination of those things. And then eventually, it's like, should have been doing this so much longer ago, you know? So, but yeah, it's been interesting to say anything else about it, you know?
Yeah, it's so crazy. And that it was the hardest thing for me. And I think it's the hardest thing for everybody who is at all into fitness and wants, not even at all into fitness, anybody who wants to be a type A person or is a type A person with that desire to succeed and be successful and achieve all these things that they want to achieve in life. Some of the ways to achieve those is what seems like a slow method. Mm-hmm. So like now I run slow to run fast. And it doesn't make, when you say that, it sounds like it doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. But I've done it and it's successful. Mm-hmm. And it's that same thing that you're talking about with, you know, going to the meet and hitting 9 for 9 and PRing is the fact that like you programmed in a way where you didn't go to the gym every single day and just beat yourself to death trying to get these numbers.
Yeah.
You train smart. You know, you're still training super hard. It's not that you're not training hard. You're just, you know, now using your brain and some education instead of just like, I'm going to pick heavy thing up, move heavy thing,
right.
heavy things back down. And it took me, you know, a long time to realize that. And that's that self-reflection piece is there are other ways out there. There are better ways out there. And I promise right now, there is a better way out there to do what I'm doing than the way that I am doing it. I just haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that in this world and exactly where you two guys are right now is we're going to continue to seek to find it. And when we find the better way, we're going to continue to seek to find the next best way to do it because it's that constant self-improvement. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what you said, Adam, about, tell her to text me so that I can see what is going on with the squat so I can fix it. Mm-hmm. And it's that realization that, hey, I'm not perfect. Yeah. I don't have the perfect blueprint to fixing, you know, what my specialty is. But the openness, like now together we are all going to succeed and you're going to build a better team. And I think every one of the players that both of you guys coach has a far greater appreciation for you coaching them today than they would have if it was the person 2 years ago with the same amount of knowledge you have today. But just the personality and the way that you're able to bring them and the fact that they know that you are going to continue to pursue the best possible information to provide the best possible result to them. Yeah. And I think that is beyond significant. And I know you guys agree just based on the conversation.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
And yeah, it's I was just thinking it's like letting a comfortable good getting in the way of a uncomfortable great.
Yeah.
A lot of people stop at that comfortable good. Like, you know, Adam had his volleyball player. It was good. She didn't injure herself yet. Nothing was wrong yet. Mm-hmm. You had your methods. They were good. Mm-hmm. They worked for you. You could still run your 10Ks, your 5Ks, whatever.
Exactly.
It was good. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like still a lot better ways to do things, and I'm finding that every day. Like, there's a lot better ways to do things for me. There's a lot better ways to coach. There's a lot better ways to eat. There's, you know, better ways to do literally everything. Coming up for me, I get to go do my redneck bullshit here, as Adam says. I'm probably duck hunting wrong. Like I'm doing, you know, my hobbies. Like I enjoy duck hunting. So it doesn't have to be all this fitness stuff. It doesn't have to be our mindset. It can be anything. If you're a golfer and you're doing well, you're shooting, you know, like 4 over on 9.
I golf today, so we don't want to talk about
right, exactly. So if there's something good, there's still a little bit better, and that's what you see at that super high level of competition. Everyone's just dialed in to find that extra half of a percent.
Yeah.
Just looking for what's that little edge. And it's a difficult conversation because at the high levels, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Finding that greatness is absolutely worth it. But when you're beginning, finding that good is great.
It is beyond great.
Finding something good. And I think we get caught up looking for great before we look for good, and we get comfortable with good before we reach great.
No, I fully agree. That's a very powerful statement.
Yeah,
I'm actually writing that down right now.
A good, because I won't remember that. But it's this difficult thing where we're always looking for what we think will be great, but are we stopping at good, or have we reached good yet? And there's a lot of these building blocks that need to be in place. And I think just the easiest to demonstrate is the squat. It's out there. There's a lot of body mechanics moving, and we see all these tiny little bits that can go wrong. And like, yeah, you got a good squat. It's not great yet, but beyond the person that's like sticking their head past their knees and their butt way up in the air, like, hey, you sat down and you got up. That's good. Good for you.
Yeah,
we can work from that.
It's a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
It's a starting point. And that's when I had a guy on here who was Nicholas Hina. He was 621 pounds, right? He had lost less weight, but at 621 pounds, he was doing nothing but laying on the couch. And he had to start. And his start was basically he would walk around the block, but he would have to sit down 10 times to get around 0.10 of a mile. And he would have to sit down. So he would sit down every 0.1 mile, but it was a start.
Right.
And that's what people got to realize is that start was good. And that good was actually like, it's magnificent.
Great.
It's great. Right.
Yeah.
But and what you're saying is like, you've got to realize like, this is at good, and to get to great, we need to keep going. Don't get comfortable here. Once you're able to achieve this lap around the block,
right,
you finally made it to good now. Don't get comfortable here. Keep going. It's a long road to great. And I believe if you keep that mentality, even when you are great, you'll always want to be better than where you're at. It's what I've told people since the world records. I'm like, I could have gone faster. That was a good performance.
Yeah, still had
it was
a little bit
not
left.
It was not great because I could train more and I can get better and I can be faster at it.
Right.
And so I tell this to people too, and this blows people's minds. I'm like, I can't wait for the guy to break it. I'm waiting for I'm excited for somebody.
Good. Tell me how much faster I need to run next time.
Exactly. Like I love it because it shows that the human body is remarkable beyond belief, and I think it's just awesome to see. And I'm sure, Adam, you being a huge power lifter, like how cool is it to see somebody when you lift, the 700 plus pounds, and then you see somebody else lift 5 pounds more, like it hurts a little inside because you want to be the strongest man in the room. But at the same time, it is like it's remarkable to see what a human body can do when you look at somebody and you're like, damn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And seeing something,
go for it.
you constantly have to steal the spotlight, don't you, Ben? So
it's already on me. It's not being stolen.
This is true. But a couple things that I was thinking about when you guys were talking about those things is Ben and I on our show, every now and again, we do a reading list. Like we'll do one for summer and then winter, whatever. And a book that Ben recommended last time was called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And so immediately, I go out and pick up everything that Ben recommends because I can't stand the thought of him knowing more than I do, even though I know it's a losing battle for me. But there's a big takeaway from that book with me was, the growth mindset or the fixed mindset. And looking back at my old powerlifting days and stuff like that, I had that fixed mindset where everything had to be heavy. It had to be West Side till I die, doing conjugate, lots of bands, max effort, bro, things like that. And then, you start to mature and you go into this. I like to think that I've got a growth mindset now where I'm open to anything. Like, show me what's best or show me what's best right now. Like, that's what I want. And maybe it's not, one word that we toss around a lot on the podcast. It's not so much healthy or this is the best way to do it. What's optimal? What's going to be optimal for me, for my training, for you, for your nutrition, things like that. So that's kind of what I'm looking for now. But I mean, that also it has to go against that ego that we were talking about a little bit. Because if you've got that fixed mindset to where this system's the best, and that's because my ego's directly tied to this. Like, this is what I know. This is what's been taught to me. But to go into that growth mindset, you kind of got to fight against that ego, right? And explore other areas. Maybe there's something you can get from CrossFit, or maybe, something that they're doing in this group class over here. There's some movement or some stabilization thing that they're doing that I can implement into my training that's going to make me more optimal for what I'm doing now. But just that having that growth mindset as compared to that fixed mindset. And I'll tell you what, I mean, anybody listening, I highly recommend that book. And like I said, Ben recommended it to us. I've got it on audiobook, and then I was at a book sale just last week, and I picked it up on paperback, and I was telling the lady that was checking me out at the register about it, and I said, I can't believe you guys have this on sale. It was 10 cents. And I said, this is such a great resource. And she's like, well, what's it about? And I said, well, it just talks about the growth mindset or the fixed mindset and the fact that we can continue to learn things as we get older. And she looked right at me and she goes, you mean people don't know that? And I was like, well, yeah, actually they don't. And I used to be one of those people that you're talking about. So highly recommend that book, but that's just what I was thinking about when you guys were discussing that.
Yeah, it's so funny too, because so many things in this world are assumed, right? All the way back to the locking of the locker. It's an assumed task, so like, and that's been something really hard for me to grasp my brain around, as I'm sure both of you guys and everybody in the world is that sometimes we just assume that somebody knows something when in fact they don't necessarily have a clue, especially when you assume that they know it about themselves.
Yes.
So I have no problem giving somebody feedback about any aspect that I feel confident in my knowledge on, because it's like, hey, maybe they've never reflected on themselves or done that and adjusted, their mindset, even in one area from fixed to growth, because as we learn through self-reflection is you're changing little areas from fixed to growth before you can actually change yourself completely from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. It takes time. It's not something that you can be like, oh, read this book, I'm going to have a growth mindset.
Yeah, I'm good to go now. Yeah, everything's fixed.
Yeah, let me just jump in this brain here and flip that switch quick. No, I mean, it took me 2 years to learn how to control my mind. For me to go from the fixed mindset I had to a growth style mindset. And I know in certain areas, I still have a fixed mindset. I know I do, and I write it down and I'm trying to fix it, but it's a lifelong process of getting there and staying there. Because as soon as you start to gain, absorbent amount of knowledge on something, you begin to go into this more fixed path and you readjust yourself. So when I started keto months ago, I was like, I saw these gains right away, like you do on any diet. They're immediate gains because you just changed it. You just made a drastic change to your body.
Right.
You're going to see gains. But you also see some losses in other areas from a drastic change to your body. And I was like, yep, keto's the only way, and I was doing my self-reflection. I was like, all you talked about for the last week was keto. You sold people on keto. You've been on keto for 2 weeks. What do you really know about keto?
Ooh, you only did it for a week. Someone could take notes, Adam.
Yeah.
Shut up, Ben. Leave me alone.
Yeah. It's good. We had a good time for this 14 months. It's awesome.
It's so good, but that's just and that's just how it is with the mindsets. You gotta focus on it. So, but the one thing I want to ask you guys before this gets too crazy long, because you guys don't ever record typically super long episodes that I've seen.
Try not to, and then sometimes we end up doing that.
Yeah, every once and again I end up on those too. And we, the three of us are going to do some more podcasts, I think, because we both have, through our platforms, we both have a very similar goal. And I think that same underlying goal is that inspiration and education of others. You guys do it a lot more in the fitness realm, and you're far superior knowledge to my knowledge in the fitness realm. I've got my body locked in. I don't have the education of others anywhere near where you guys are at, and that's just a real fact. You guys have spent years researching that. I have not.
Right.
So I definitely want to have some more podcasts together, just because I get some more, free education, if you will, as well as anybody else who's listening. So I think it's good all the way around. But the one thing I want to ask you guys each is that famous question, that one of the two famous questions that I always ask, and that's to define what's made you guys both unbreakable, as individuals, because you guys are both very much unbreakable people, especially with the life experiences that I've seen and what we've heard about tonight already. Especially, heard a little bit more about Adam, some of his, breakdowns with the hernias and things like that. But Ben, we'll give you the floor first here.
Yeah, I never really had a good answer for this until recently. I don't think I recently did the Red Bull 400.
Yeah, that's a beast.
Which a lot of our listeners have heard me talk about. But the Red Bull 400 is a run up from the landing zone of a ski flying hill to the top of the ski flying hill, about a 400 meter run overall distance. And I think it's roughly a 200 meter climb in that distance.
Yeah, the one you did is like the tallest in North America, isn't it? I think,
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the ski jump. So it's the one from the Olympics, for those of you that don't know.
Correct.
So it's the one where they go down the hill and then they go soaring off.
Eddie the Eagle.
Yeah, Eddie the Eagle.
Out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so it's the highest one in North America. So let's preface that a little.
Yeah, and this one's unique even in the Red Bull circuit. The other ones are in like Finland, Sweden. There was one in Kazakhstan. There are a few in Japan.
Yeah.
This is there's one in Park City, Utah, and they all have this synthetic grass landing. So they have like sprinklers going when you land on the grass. You can do it year round. That way you can get training in. And this is an old hill. It's been around since I believe the 1960s, and they still had a natural dirt hill that they landed on. So the weird thing about their obviously, it's the only one that has dirt, and it's this really iron-heavy dirt up in Iron County, Michigan, or Gogebic County, Michigan. So as we're going through the day, people are getting this dust kicked up. It's been dry. It's just like flying in lungs. And I experienced that myself, and I experienced allergies on the hill. I had this hell of a time getting up. And you get 10 minutes, I believe, to get from the landing zone where you start to the top of the landing hill, and then you can proceed to the jump where you run the rest of the distance. And at about 5 minutes, I started just really struggling breathing. It's like, okay, shit, I didn't realize I was this out of shape, whatever, I'll keep going. 6 minutes, they're yelling out the time. I'm like, damn, like I can't breathe right now. Like I can't do it. And I'm climbing up. I'm at maybe 75% of the way up this hill, and I just can't take in air.
Yeah.
It's not working. I'm looking around. I can't focus on anything. I'm getting lightheaded. I can't get oxygen in my system. I'm just looking around in this completely disoriented area because you're on a 45-degree slope. You're hanging onto a cargo net. You're looking over the beautiful forest land of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but you realize you have to climb the rest of this distance, and I didn't think I had it in me. Like, my body was not working at this time, and up until that point in my life, I never really experienced this where my body just flat out would not work. And it's like, okay, shit, what do I do from here? I have 25 to 40 meters to go to climb up this hill, and I have to do it. So one step at a time. I take a step, take a little breather, take a step, take a breather, step by step by step by step. I make it to the top of that landing hill, sit down. They're like, okay, you got about 2 minutes before the next wave goes, and then you can pretty much take until then to get up on the ramp. And I'm sitting there, I can't catch my breath. Get some water. It's like staring at the water bottle, and I have it in my hand, closed. I'm staring at the lid of this water bottle. All I need to do is twist it off, twist it, bring it to my mouth. Then I can get a drink. Could not do that. I was physically shutting down. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. They moved me to the medical tent. I'm like, I'm done. So it was possibly the first time in my life that there was a concrete failure in my mind where I can definitively say I did not do what I set out to do that day. I didn't make it to the top of that ramp. My body almost killed me that day. And it was incredibly frustrating for me. As I was sitting there on the top of the hill, my cousin Dan was waiting there for me. So luckily I had someone there, and he's a EMT. So he has experience in that. And we had a medical staff, and he's like, yeah, dude, it wasn't going to happen. Your body shut down. You couldn't have done that. And still in my mind, I was frustrated. And finally get to the bottom of the hill. You get to take a nice chairlift down, like the longest chairlift of my life, sitting there staring out at just this beautiful, picturesque view of Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There's Lake Superior off in the distance, the Porcupine Mountains. Should have been riding this high, but I couldn't help but feel like I failed. And I get to the bottom, and everyone asks, how'd you do? We didn't see you get to the top there. It's like, oh, shit, because I didn't. And I go tell everyone the story, and my dad's there. He's like, what's cool? I've never experienced that in my life, where I couldn't physically do anything, and you found your limit. Not many people have that ability to say they have definitively found their limit. They have pushed their body to the point where they can't move, where it's going to fail on them. And I did it. So that it was just this shift in perspective that I had to open myself up to that form of thinking. Like, what can I take away from this failure? It's that I can keep going. I can keep taking that extra step if I need to, if I have to drive. And it really comes down to me being unbreakable is just me being a grinder. I'm going to get out there. If I say I'm going to do something, come hell or high water, I'll do it slowly, but I will do it, taking one step in front of the other, maybe collapsing at the end, but I'll do it anyway because I said I was going to. And that mindset really permeates everything. Like, if I'm setting out for a goal, I'm going to do it. Might not be pretty, might not be fast, but step by step, I'll get out there and grind, and not going to keep me down. That's for sure.
No, that's awesome. It's very accurate, I think, to a lot of people, is that survivability. Mm-hmm. Like, survive as long as I humanly can yep. towards the goal until that I no longer am surviving. And that is when I'm done.
Right.
And after that, you got right back up, got to the bottom and started to look at right. how can I fix this for next year?
That's exactly it.
It's that's
I left there staring at that thing like, next year I'll be at the top.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
Because so the goal's not done yet.
It's not. It's definitely not done. And I got to keep practicing, get better. But I'll do it. I'll be up there. Don't you worry about that.
I love it because it's super true, because that's that survivability. Mm-hmm. Just keep going, never quitting, staying unbreakable. It's the perfect definition.
Yeah. All right.
Adam, you're up, brother.
I got to tell you, I hate complimenting Ben too much, but I love that story every time he tells it, because that's the one thing that I'm fascinated by too, is like, what's that point for me? Where does it come where I just physically shut down? Because I don't think I've been anywhere close to it. And it's not because I'm some machine, T6 Terminator type guy. It's just because I haven't mentally pushed myself to that point yet. So that's something that I'm hoping in my 35th year here on this earth that I'm going to find. It's a goal of mine. But no, I spent past couple of days thinking about this because I knew this question was coming, and I really like trying to tie things up just into one word, just mic drop with that one word. And I find that that's pretty successful with coaching kids and things like that. Just that dramatic moment, you enlighten these young minds, and then you walk out the door. And it didn't really happen until this morning. I got up and got it before the family did, and I'm working through another book, and it's called High Hopes. I don't know if either of you guys have checked this out, but it's High Hopes, Taking the Purple to Pasadena. It's by Gary Barnett, and it's the 95 season when he was at Northwestern and took Northwestern to the Rose Bowl and all the things that he had to overcome, and kind of inspiring these kids who might not be the best athletes, and this isn't PC maybe, but because Northwestern has such high academic standards for the Big Ten, they don't always get the best athletes, Yep. They can't make exceptions because your 40's super fast. So he got what he got, and he had to work with that. But it was constantly him striving to be a better leader, and leading not so much through motivation but inspiration. Because I think I stole that from Simon Sinek, but that's the two ways that I think we lead. It's either motivation, it's that reward, it's that paycheck, or it's the motivation of not getting reprimanded, or it's inspiration. Obviously, inspiration's always going to be a little bit more successful. But he's telling stories going into some of these games in this 95 season, and this word stuck out to me, and it was relentless. And when I look back at my powerlifting career the first time, there were some dark days there, and I've never really gotten into this too much, but I think Ben knows this about me and some people that are close to me. I kind of struggle sometimes with mental issues and depression and anxiety and things like that. And during that time, and I always call it from my 500-pound days to my 700-pound days, there were some really dark days. And it was a lot of, sitting in a dark room by myself because I'd alienated myself from everybody that was around me because I just had this one-track mind. I can remember the day when I was riding with my training partner. I'd picked him up at his house, and we were crossing the train tracks in town, heading to the gym, and I said, before this is all done, I said, I will bench 700 pounds. And he said, yeah, you probably will. And the thing is, though, I never thought about what was going to happen after that. So then everything kind of fizzled out. But to take it back, when I hit that 500-pound bench, I just breezed right through it. It took me like 4 months to get to 600. And then from 600 to 700 was about 2 years of very, very little progress. And I blamed it on the girlfriends at the time, so I'd break up with a girlfriend. I swear to God, we left the gym one day, and he had outbenched me that day on that particular day. I'm trying to think of everything that maybe I did wrong. I can't think of anything. The only thing I can come up with that's different between he and I is I had a girlfriend and he didn't. Before I got home that day, I called her up. She was at Kent State, and I broke up with her. But because in the next week, I outbenched him. So I had to have been right. That's science, right?
Yeah.
But bro science right there.
Which, I mean, that leads to those pretty dark and lonely nights in the basement. But it was finding a way, kind of like very similar to what Ben said, just to relentlessly pursue this goal. No matter what, no matter how slow, how long this is going to take, the sacrifices that you have to make, it might take 2 years, it might take 4 years, I don't know. But just to relentlessly pursue this goal. And I think for me, that's what Unbreakable is. It's just relentlessness. And I think sometimes, looking back, especially on myself, we're talking about self-reflection earlier, it was to the detriment of myself. I mean, because there was some, really, and I mean, we can get into that later in another episode or something, but there's some really dark times where I'm starting to have a little success, but there's just no happiness and no reward. And it was just because of that relentless pursuit. And now, you fast track to where I am now, 10 to 15 years later, and I've got this relentless attitude, but it's balanced, if that makes sense. And it's not so ego-based. It's about becoming a better coach, becoming a better person, being a better dad, husband, in order to enrich other people around me. And that's kind of my reward. When my son gave me this present the other day because I told him I wanted him to be the manager of the wrestling team. Or it's my wife telling me how proud she is of me, the way I act in social situations now, because I can actually carry a conversation and interact with people. Those are like rewards that I have now because of this relentless pursuit to better myself and just to be a better human being. So for me, Unbreakable is just relentlessness.
No, that's an awesome definition. I love how you were able to talk about it as, before, how your relentlessness was almost or could essentially be considered a negative in your life. Mm-hmm. And at one point, potentially sent you down a road that could have almost broken you, mentally, with depression and things like that. But that you still had that relentless pursuit to just succeed in life that would pull you through. And now with finding balance with it, you're able to live a great life and provide things for your family that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to provide.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. I love that word. Relentless is a word that we used to have written on a wrestling wall.
Mm-hmm.
It was the relentless pursuit of excellence was like the whole saying, and that has stuck with me. And each of those words have stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just a freaking stupid awesome word that I use, potentially too often myself. So it's very much a mic drop word.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I thought so too.
Well done, Adam.
And I was thinking, as Adam was saying it, the pursuit aspect of it really came to mind, because even only knowing him for the short period of time, I can still tell it's an active pursuit of his. And there are definitive areas of success where it's small things like, a couple of years ago, before the hernias, he was lifting to the point where he got hernias and wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah.
And now I think, maybe with his coach Nick, maybe with some other perspectives thrown in, it's still a relentless pursuit to lift weights, to be better, to do whatever. But it's now a pursuit and not a stagnating mindset.
Yeah.
Where I'm just blindly go forward and bull rush through these walls. It's like, there's a door over there that I could probably go through if I take one step to the left or one step to the right. And it's this pursuit that now he's following it instead of just blindly going forward relentlessly. And that relentless pursuit of excellence is an incredible statement. And that's something we should all strive for.
And what I really like about that is like, I don't know if you ever achieve excellence in my mind. So it's like where I was saying before, I set that goal of that 700-pound bench, and then I never thought about what was going to be after that. Well, if we're just striving relentlessly to pursue excellence, there's always something else. There's always something else to be done. So for me, it was like that lull after you hit that goal. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie For the Love of the Game, where Kevin Costner pitches the no-hitter, and then afterwards he's crying in his room because he had like nothing. That was always what kind of came to mind when I thought about like my career back then. Although, a 700-pound bench and a perfect game, it's kind of a little different pitching-wise, but whatever. But it's like if you don't think about like what comes after that, there is going to be, they talk about it with Olympic athletes. Like once that you have that lead up and that build up, and then it's over, and then what? But if we're just striving for excellence in powerlifting, fitness, running marathons, running up hills like an insane person, whatever it might be, duck hunting, I don't care. If you're striving to reach excellence, it's never going to stop. And while that can be a little depressing, maybe, I think if you're really honed in and you've got the right mindset, you've got that growth mindset, it should be really exciting, because there's always going to be something to learn. There's always going to be something to improve on. And for me, yeah, that's excitement, man. That's living. So.
No, that's 100%. I couldn't have worded or explained the relentless pursuit of excellence better than that, because it makes those achievements at times just another day in life.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. Like, yeah, my greatest physical achievement right now is breaking a Guinness World Record, but that is just a single day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's a chunk of time in my life, and it's not. I don't want to be defined by that single moment. So it was just, it's that good. Me still moving towards great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still on that pursuit to find what true excellence is, because that day wasn't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the perfect race.
Right.
I had a race that was good enough for me to get the result that I wanted or that I needed to have. But there's still constant room for improvement. And I think that sends us into the next famous question, which is the what's next. Because if we're constantly pursuing, then what's next? So what is next after each achievement? So we know one of Ben's what's next is to get back out and do the Red Bull 400 again. But I know there's more than that. So what do you got next, Ben?
Yeah, see, that's the weird thing, because I get stuck on these goals, maybe these dates where it's like,
Yeah.
This is a big red circle on my calendar. I'm doing this, and then I get shiny object syndrome and I go in a different direction. I think what I'd like to do is, it's been kicking around in my mind for a few years now, is do like a century bike race. So that's one thing where I've never really been a cyclist. Like, oh, I've been able to ride a bike since I was 3 or whatever.
Yeah, we can ride the Zesties.
Yeah, exactly. But I've never been a competitive cyclist. It is maybe my only form of cardio I don't despise. I ran a half marathon last year, which I hated every step of because it's a waste of time. But it's something that incredibly challenging. You're in the saddle for 5 hours, riding 100 miles in one day, like incredible feat right there. And I think going from the defensive tackle that would complain about our coach making us run across the field widthwise, which is 53.3 yards, complaining that that's too far.
I love that you know that.
Who's
Coach,
counting?
why are we running this distance? This is conditioning. I had a policy that as a D tackle, I'm supposed to run 40 yards at most. If I'm in the middle of the field, it's 25 to either sideline, 15 front and back. I'll give myself for chasing a quarterback or running back. Beyond that, it's not my problem anymore. Yeah. It should be D-backs or linebackers picking it up. So I jokingly said, like, I never would voluntarily run more than 40 yards without someone messing up. And doing 13.1 was just a way to go out there and say, like, yeah, I can do this. It's one of those things, like,
well, it's a part of finding that breaking point that you found.
Exactly.
So
you didn't find it.
You got to push yourself in all these different areas because it's different in each area.
Exactly. So the next step would be probably a 50-mile bike ride for the, logical person, but go out there and do 100. Like, okay, what's the next giant hill? It's going to be riding 100 miles, which is a huge distance, and I don't even want to drive 100 miles in a day, let alone bike it. But I think that's a cool achievement that, again, not many people are doing. I can add that to the list of achievements that is my personal rewards. Like, oh, I've done Tough Mudders. I've attempted the hill climb because I'm not going to be deterred. I'm going to do it next year and finally reach the top. Done a half marathon. I can say I've done a century, and maybe mix that with I still have that meathead mentality in my mind where it's like, I should probably lift heavy things. And I've never done a 500-pound deadlift. So getting over 5 plates would be another achievement that I'd like to check off the list and just
did you send me your man card yet?
No, I think
that's something new. I thought I didn't know that about you. We're going to have to talk after the show. Go ahead. Sorry.
A 375 bench in high school, so I think that's okay.
I'm teasing. You're okay.
I wrecked my shoulder. Yeah, I still got 4 plates.
You're
Don't
okay.
You worry about
I'm teasing.
I still got my 4 plates down. I got.
Don't get defensive, bro. That's just ego.
Run away from it. There we go. Yeah. Getting in physical altercations with guys over my bench press, but
that's another story. Will, we don't have to get into that.
That's a deep cut, but being able to just check these things off the list, and I think the physical accomplishments are more easily, I don't know, just like more tangible. They're out there and more concrete, and I can get into those more than I can get into like these mindset things. I still feel like I don't need to do that, which maybe it's because I'm 25 and a guy, like, whatever.
It'll come.
Exactly.
The mindset stuff, one day you'll wake up and be like, I'm going to focus on mindset.
Right. Like,
I'm going to fix this mindset
I
piece.
see like glimpses of it every once in a while. Like, I should probably pay attention to this, but it's these, physical feats of excellence maybe, or just putting myself in the top 5%. Say, how many people have done a century bike race? Probably not 5% of humans.
Yeah, I bet it's less than 1%.
Yeah, how many have deadlifted 500 pounds? Probably
less than the number that has biked a century, I bet.
Exactly. So being able to check these things off the list, I think that's what's next, and just keep pushing myself, because going from that 60-pound weight loss, going from running 40 yards to 13 miles, it's like I've got a lot of gas left in the tank. I got to figure out where it's going to take me. So
no, I like it because you can see you're hunting those breaking points. Yeah, you're hunting that point of finding, where you're not unbreakable,
right,
and where you break, and then from that you can do that self-reflection, make the adjustments, and go back next year and be successful. You know,
Exactly.
and I think that that's huge. A buddy of mine, Sean Robinson, he wanted to do a century ride, and he set out to do a century ride and failed.
Mm-hmm.
Went back 2 weeks later to do another century ride and failed.
Wow.
And he got back up a third time, did a self-reflection again,
Right.
gave it 2-3 more weeks, got back out a third time, and he was successul.
Back to back too, like that.
Yeah, and it's just like that whole refusal to fail.
Mm-hmm.
I might have broke this time, but I'm not going to quit next time. I just need to readjust some things and get back out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's huge. As oftentimes my what's next is checking something off the box,
Right.
because that's it's the easy what's next.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's right there and you can see it and you can go out and start to try it and start to achieve for it. And those build into, the bigger and longer. And like taking a century ride is going to take he spent months getting to that first attempt. And then after failing, he was like, nope, I trained this hard.
Yeah.
I know it's in me.
Yeah, I'm not throwing it away.
So I think that's huge. That's awesome. So Adam, what do you got going next? What's next?
Contrary to Ben, and it's probably is because I'm 10 years older than him and 2 kids and a wife. But like you said, that day is going to come for him. It's more on the self-development side, I think, for me, and it's really getting in and digging in and asking myself some tough questions. Why do I respond the way I do to certain things? What can I do to be a better dad and to be more present? And then how can I better serve my wife? Like Ben and I talked about this 2 weeks ago, because instead of doing the traditional New Year's Eve thing, and we've already talked about how we don't really buy into that whole thing, but when I turned 35 and it was my birthday, I said, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to break down what my goals are, what my plans are for this year. And I was breaking them down into 3 different categories, and it was like mental, physical, and then spiritual, if that's what you wanted to call it. So then I have, little bullet points underneath those, and it's not really something when you look at the mental and spiritual side to where it's something you can check off. It's not a box you can check off, because I think it's something that you're just going to have to relentlessly pursue to get better. And I've made leaps and bounds of progress, but it's kind of like you said, when you switch to keto for the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, look at what just happened in 7 days. In 6 weeks, I'm going to be back at my birth weight, but you get those newbie gains, and I think that's where I'm at. And I'm expecting that kind of plateau or to hit that wall where it's going to be maybe some difficult times wrestling with myself in my mind. But all of that is just to become a better person and to serve people better. And I really want to be a really good coach, and I don't want it to be attached to ego. I want to serve kids better than I think we are right now, because what I see, not so much in the strength and conditioning industry, but mainly just in schools in general, with the few that I'm dealing with and with teachers and administration, I see us making blanket statements about millennials or whatever generation it might be, that they're all this way or they're lazy and they just want to be on there, and they're only responding to the challenges that we give them, in my opinion. And if we set our bar a little bit higher, I think we would be shocked at what the millennial generation could accomplish, because I see it in the weight room. And I'm working with girls primarily, if I told them to run through a wall and they'd get better, they would do it. And it's because I set the standards a little bit higher for them. I don't coddle. I don't, tap them on the butt and say, okay, and they respond to it. And that's kind of the goal that I've set for myself, is to, just be a better coach, be a better person, and serve people better. Now on the physical side, Ben and I have talked about it, and I still want to do probably 2 more powerlifting meets this year. I'd like to qualify for the USPA national meet, because then I could compete against my coach and out deadlift him. But I also want to kind of transition and go into more of a physique competition, because I get burnt out just dieting for the sake of dieting and trying to be lean to look good in my dad bod. So I think if I had that goal or I had that date circled on a calendar, I'd be interested to see where I could push myself to. It's kind of that reward system that we were talking about earlier. But overall, like the big one for me, those physical things, and I'm not trying to be I know I can do them. Like that's kind of the easier stuff for me. But breaking it down and getting raw with myself and really digging into the mental side and how can I serve people better, that's what's going to be challenging. So, but I'm looking forward to it. So that's kind of what's on deck for me.
I like it. I really like, and a lot of it's because of where I'm at today, is I really like that the mental side of the what's next. Like, how do I develop myself mentally better, for the future, for the people I surround myself with, the people I work with, and that's all the people that you surround yourself with. But it's like, how do I create a better version of myself,
Mm-hmm.
and how do I create better versions of the people that I work with through inspiring them? And I think that that's like one of the coolest what's next, and the fact that you're at that point in life where you're going through that process, because that process, like I said, I've been working on it for like 4 years now, and it is a painful process at times
Mm-hmm.
to tell yourself that you're not as good as you think you are. It hurts the feelings sometimes.
It does.
You do it to yourself, and it's like, why am I hurting my own feelings?
This conversation makes me think of, there's a Greek philosophical term called tetrapharmakos, if I have this right, and it's Epicurean's 4-part cure. And this is going to get like way deep right now. But what we all seem to be trying to do is do what's difficult and try to find out what is going to be hardest for us to achieve and get it. And the 4-part cure says, if I can get this right, what's hard is easy to endure. What's good is easy to achieve. There is don't fear death and don't fear God. Now, don't fear death is like when you're dead, you don't need to worry about being dead because you're dead. It doesn't matter.
Do about it.
When you're alive, you don't need to worry about being dead because you're not dead. The don't fear God was back in the polytheistic days where it's like, okay, are you going to worship Athena or Zeus? Don't worry about it. Your crop harvest will be the same regardless of who you patronize that week, whoever's temple you go to. But the first two, what's good is easy to achieve and what's difficult or what's hard is easy to endure, are the two that I think we find ourselves going to time and time again. And the what's good is easy to achieve is like, okay, finding a home, finding a dry spot to lay your head at night, not too hard. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's not difficult. Finding food at the end of the day, finding water, those good things in life, pretty easy to achieve. But then we poke into that what's hard is easy to endure, thinking, okay, your marathon took how long?
Yeah, like 6.5 hours.
6 hours, but a blink of an eye, right?
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing.
Easy to endure. It's incredibly difficult at the time, but whatever. It's easy
and
to
you
endure.
Look back at it and laugh on some of the things, much like the 700 pounds. I guarantee you look back
Yep.
on it and
2.5
laugh on
years.
how quick that time went by.
Yeah.
When you look at it now,
I can't even
during the time you were like, "Fuck this goal."
Right.
It's maybe I spent 17 months trying to get to the world record pace.
Mhm.
Numerous times I said, "Fuck this goal."
Right.
I didn't train for weeks at a time, not days, but weeks off,
Right.
because I was like, "It's fucking stupid."
Yeah, exactly. Reminding yourself of these daunting tasks, they'll get completed eventually.
Yep.
Regardless of what you do, if you set your mind to it. So yes, it will be difficult, but it will be easy to endure once you finally set yourself up to do that. And I think that's what the three of us really like to put ourselves in. Like, okay, we know what's good is easy. I can deadlift 315 pounds. Like,
Yeah.
for some people, yeah, that's amazing. For me, that's good. Like, it doesn't really trip my trigger at all. Like 500, that's big.
Mhm.
Yeah.
100-mile bike ride, that's big. Let's put ourselves in these hard times, get through it, and then see what's next.
I think that's. I don't know if you guys got anything else you want to add, but I think that's I think the key theme of the episode, and the biggest takeaway So I've got the way you worded that. That was perfect. I've got nothing to add after that.
Thanks, Epicurious.
See, now if Ben's parents are wondering if that education was well spent, there you go. He just did Greek mythology in like 5 minutes. I mean, what more can you want?
I'm impressed. I'm like, between using the word relentless and that statement, like the mic's been dropped. Knowledge bombs for everyone.
There you go.
Glad we could help.
Yeah.
Well, Will, before we get out of here, though, since we are going to release this on our end as well, when we do the intro, Ben's going to go in and talk about your accomplishments and what you did, breaking the record and everything.
Yeah.
But after we go through all of this, we like to ask people a question too, and it's looking at everything you've done. There's somebody listening right now, somewhere across the world, because everybody all over the world tunes in to listen to Ben, and they're inspired. But there's something that they want to do. They have a goal for this upcoming year, but they haven't quite. We'll do it on Monday. Next Monday it starts. Next Monday I start training for this race. I start my diet next Monday. I'll get my gym membership next Monday. I call it the football coach motivational speech or whatever, where you grab them by the face mask and you light a fire under their ass. So I want you to talk to that person now. I want you to lead by inspiration. Get them fired up, get them off the couch. But like we always do, we put perimeters around this to where you cannot say, if I can do it, you can do it. What do you say to that person now?
Fact. I say right now, like Monday is too far away. The gains you have between now and Monday are substantial and important. And if you kick the can down the road, you're going to keep kicking the can down the road. So like we built a hooded sweatshirt that says rest tomorrow, because that is a fact. If you get up today and you say, I'll rest tomorrow, and then when you get up tomorrow and you say, I'll rest tomorrow, like because tomorrow becomes today. Mm-hmm. And so you're never really getting to that rest point. And so my thing is like, start right now. Like if we've got the time to have this conversation, guess what we've got the time to do? Mm-hmm. We've got the time to stop talking and start having results. And you're not getting those results, so you got to go out. And this is for the three of us, this is our result. We're getting to inspire other people. We're taking our life experiences and using those to help motivate other people. But you've got to be self-driven and do the motivation yourself. Mm-hmm. So you've got to show up, and that show up starts right now. So if it's, 10 o'clock at night and you're thinking about going to bed and starting your workout tomorrow, just start it right now. Go to your workout now and sleep in. Mm-hmm. Instead of getting up early, like go do it right now. There's nothing stopping you from this very moment of going out and achieving. So go do what you want to do, but go do it right now. And I think that's the biggest thing is like people kick the can down the road instead of just getting started.
Yeah.
And it's like if you get started today, you'll start to build the discipline and the habit, because it's a habit. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you start to build that habit, so it's just like reading, we'll stop talking about the fitness stuff, but if you want to become a better reader, start the habit right now. Mm-hmm. Read for 10 minutes.
Right.
That's all it takes to start. You can go walk around the block in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. That's all it takes to start. You want to get better at push-ups? Go do 30 seconds worth of push-ups. I mean, maybe a minute, and then you're generally burned the fuck out. But go start.
Right.
And that's the big thing is like, boom, get started now. Don't wait, because if you wait till Monday, on Monday you're gonna find an excuse. To wait till Monday again. Mm-hmm. And wait till Monday doesn't work.
Yeah, and what I tell my clients when they're staring at a heavy trap bar or a heavy squat bar that they're gonna get under, it's like, do it before you think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't think about it. Just do it.
Fact.
And then you'll figure it out from there. Like the longer you stand there and stare at this goal that you're trying to reach, the longer you stare at this task that you're trying to accomplish, the longer it's going to take you.
And you see everybody do that in the gym, right? I'm guilty of it every morning. I go to get in the pool. Right. Pool water is cold. It's 34
right.
It's 3:34 in the morning. Like I do not want to be at the gym. Mm-hmm. And I stare at it like it's gonna, like the laps are gonna swim themselves.
Right.
And I think about it, the more I get in my head, and guess what? The first probably 300, 400, 500 meters of my swim is garbage. Mm-hmm. because I've got all the other shit going on in my brain about why I don't want to be doing this or why I can't do this or can't achieve it. And then I get done with like the first couple hundred and I'm like,
yeah,
wasn't so bad. Now can we focus on why we're here?
Exactly.
And so that's why I tell people, like, you just got to go and start and do it. And once you're doing it, it'll become a habit. You'll get better. And as you get better, you will find so much enjoyment from what you are doing. And to include running, like, I promise if you ran more, you would start to enjoy it because you would find ways to enjoy it. It's just like getting to the 700 pounds. Yeah. You find ways to enjoy that pain and suffering because you don't have any other choice. If you want the goal, you got to find the enjoyment in it.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. That's all I got for you. That's great. I love that. So perfect.
Boom.
Anything else? You got anything, Ben?
No, I think I'm good. We covered a lot of ground today, and it's good. It's good to get a different set of eyes, set of ears on what we discuss on a weekly basis. And Adam and I kind of have the tendency maybe sometimes to get in our echo chamber and agree with each other a lot. And we hear our own thoughts, our own opinions, and there's a lot of overlap, but maybe not that expansive perspective that a third wheel brings to it. And not to call you the third wheel on the podcast, but
it's fine. I can be the third wheel every once again.
It's a fantastic tricycle we have here.
Absolutely.
Bring your knowledge and your experience to things like the physical nature of these goals and just the mental aspects that go behind them is huge. And it was a great discussion we got to have.
Yeah, likewise. I really enjoyed it. I'm super excited about getting this one out there. I think it's going to do a lot of good for a lot of people because there's just a lot of deep conversation here, which is huge. I'm excited to just rewatch it, and I've already got a page full of notes, and I'm like, I should have wrote down this. I got to look up that Greek mythology and write some of that down because I was just like sitting here like jaw just dropped. So, and I think that's huge. So I apologize to everybody about the beginning of this, not having the video lined up properly. And I'll get a warning thing up at the very beginning of this that you guys will have seen. But, dude, thank you guys both for doing this with me. It was an absolute pleasure combining the two podcasts for an episode. And I think we definitely, there's a lot left to talk about.
Absolutely.
So we are going to have to do this again a few times. So, and now we've got the Skype stuff worked out. So it'll be exciting in the future, us being able to do a lot of this abroad and stuff like that. So it'll be super cool.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Awesome. Well, that's it. Everybody have a good day. I always tell everybody to stay unbreakable. I don't know if you guys want anything you want to put out on the last minute here, but you guys all definitely need to stay unbreakable.
Oh, I'd just like to say, keep going forward, keep building that ambition every day. That's how I sign off on my Wednesdays. And I mean that. Just keep going forward, keep building ambition, guys.
Fact.
Relentlessly pursue excellence, and we'll see you next time.
Perfect. We're out.